Hello, it's the 20th of June, 2022, and this is a meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. Please join Council and me in O Canada. Thank you, everyone. In 1820, Indigenous people here began welcoming settlers from all over the empire. Soon, they were helping slaves escaping from the United States to settle here too. Today, our Indigenous founding partners are still here enjoying this land with us. They fish and camp under their treaty rights. Indigenous people in their thousands also live with us as neighbors and friends. Our Indigenous white and black settlers created a community with an attractive degree of harmony and prosperity. In 1857, Ontario gave official recognition to Oakville as a town. At Town Hall, all of these years later, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas of the Credit beside the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada. We fly these flags together to acknowledge our origins. People from all over the world are attracted to the livability we have created. We offer newcomers a warm spirit of welcome. We offer everyone our founding story so everyone knows what we are part of. We feel sorrow and distress for acts of racism and intolerance suffered across Canada and here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for all. The path of truth and reconciliation can unite us. Please keep well, stay safe, and let us on council know of any chance to be helpful to you and yours. Please let us know anytime you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Madam Clerk, I understand we have regrets for this meeting from Councillors Parmer and Sanju, and it appears that all the rest of us are here. Councillor, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I'm not seeing any. Council, a mover and seconder would be in order for the minutes as listed in the agenda. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Dudek, thank you for your ready hands. Are there any changes or objections? Madam Clerk, there being none, I declare that carried and the minutes are approved. Now, we have no public presentations, and it would be in order for two of us to move and second resolving into committee of the whole. Councillor Longo and Councillor Haslett-Deal, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries, and we're now in committee of the whole. Council, there are 5 consent items listed on the consent agenda and no confidential consent items. Councillor Adams.
Thanks. I was going to give you a motion to approve the consent items.
Thank you. Is there any separations or comments? Councillor Haslett-Deal.
I have a question on 7.1, but all the rest I'm fine with.
Well, please ask your question, and then maybe we can see if we can agree on Councillor Adams' motion.
So thank you very much for the comprehensive financial report. Again, I am concerned about the personnel savings, and I'm wondering if the CAO or the HR director could have let us know what is our current vacancy rate of approved positions and how that's impacting our financial results.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I actually don't have that information. If Susan Ashmore is not in here, and if she's not on the screen, then we'll have to follow up and get you that information.
I'm seeing her on the screen.
Ms. Ashmore, welcome.
Good evening. Our current vacancy rate continues to fluctuate as we hire new staff and new staff exit or existing staff move. I would say at this point, our turnover rate sits around about 6.2%. It's higher than it typically is, but is not as high as many other organizations. So we continue to recruit, and it's quite active in terms of our recruitment at this point in time. But in terms of vacancies, there are a few that through COVID we kept vacant, and we are proceeding to fill those at this time.
So is it possible for council to know how many positions are actually currently vacant? I recognize that it's a really challenging time to staff, et cetera, but how many vacant positions, how many positions are currently vacant?
At this point in time, I believe it's around 80.
Okay, thank you very much for that information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for your questions. Is there any objection to the motion by Councillor Adams? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, the consent items are approved. And that will bring us to item 9.1, the introduction to development charges public meeting. So there's a little bit of statutory business here where we have to observe the niceties of provincial legislation, and I assure you that we will observe all of those. Tonight, Council is holding a public meeting under Section 12 of the Development Charges Act 1997 as amended. The purpose of the meeting is to give the public an opportunity to ask questions, provide comments, and make representations on the 2022 Development Charges Background Study. This study calculates new development charges for town-wide services. Prior to receiving public comments, we will ask our consultant, Watson & Associates Economists Limited, to do a brief presentation of the findings of the study.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Pleasure to be before you once again. We've provided a presentation which I'll go through, and I'll make my comments to be as quick as possible, but to be able to provide you with the details within our report. Next slide, please. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've provided the opening remarks, and this meeting is like any other meeting. Public meeting will make a presentation, receive any presentations for the public, answer any questions to council, and then close the meeting. No consideration of the bylaw will be undertaken tonight. Tonight is solely for the purpose of gathering insight from the public. Next slide. Development Charge Act requires us to have a mandatory public meeting. In fact, it provides for a process where we release the background study, and we have to have at least a 60-day period on which the public can review the document and provide council with their insight. In between releasing the document and council's consideration, then there is a mandatory public meeting, as I noted. Next slide. This identifies the process we've been going through. So we've been meeting with staff. We met with senior staff, the EMT, and also engaged with the DC Steering Committee. We released the background study on the 13th of May, had a stakeholder meeting on the 27th of May, and now we're at the public meeting. We hope to have council consider the bylaw on July 12th. Next slide, please. DCs are actually been around for about 65 years. They're an opportunity for municipalities to impose charges to recover from development within the municipality, the money that you need in order to invest in growth-related infrastructure. This is in addition to what developers would normally pay, let's say within their subdivision. There are internal costs, which still remain their costs. Development charges take into account the broader costs across the community. Next slide, please. There's a methodology that's set out. In very simple terms, we identify the amount, type, and location of growth. With that growth, identify servicing needs and translate that into capital projects. There's a number of deductions that we make in order to arrive at a net cost on which we would ask the development community to contribute. Those costs must be allocated between a benefit to residential growth as well as non-residential growth. Non-residential is industrial, commercial, institutional. So we allocate the costs across those two different categories, and then we divide it by the growth to come up with the development charges. Next slide, please. So in very simple term, identify the cost of infrastructure that we need in order to support the growth, and then divide it by the growth to arrive at the development charge. Residential charges are represented normally on a low, medium, and high density charge. So low density is singles and semi-detached. Medium densities would be for your townhouse. And then for high density apartments, we normally categorize it into larger units and smaller units in order to impose a lesser charge on the smaller units. The non-residential is normally expressed on a cost per square foot. So if I have a development charge of $1 and I have a 5,000 square foot development, then I would pay 5,000 square feet times the $1, $5,000. If it's 100,000 square feet, similar type of calculation, $100,000. Next slide, please. There are mandatory exemptions. The local government sector, so the school boards, the region, the local municipalities cannot impose charges on themselves. There are provisions that industrial buildings can expand up to 50% and not have to pay a DC. If you have a single family home, you can add 2 additional apartments as long as you don't more than double the size of the unit. And if you're a medium or high density, you can add 1 additional unit without a payment being required. There are recent changes which identify that if I'm coming through, let's say with a single or a semi or a townhouse, I can add an additional apartment within that building, and I don't have to pay for that apartment. I still have to pay for the single, the semi, or the townhouse, but I don't have to pay for the apartment. And then most recently, they've provided an exemption for universities. Next slide. The municipality is allowed to consider discretionary exemptions. So these are made in Oakville types of adjustments, which could be reducing the charge in whole or part for certain types of development. Let's say a class, which would be industrial, or a type of developments, let's say a place of worship. You can phase in the charges over time, and there's a recognition if you are tearing down an existing building and replacing it with another building, that you would recognize what was there and provide a credit. Next slide. The current discretionary exemptions for the town, which have been carried forward or are recommended to be carried forward in the bylaw, are an exemption for non-residential farm buildings, public hospitals, conservation authority, places of worship. Non-residential cap, so it's basically a 50% reduction once you exceed 2 times coverage for development, nonprofit housing, and temporary structures. Next slide. Excuse me. The growth forecast we have is only over a 10-year planning horizon. To some extent, this update is, I would call to some extent, an interim update. Historically, we've had master plans for parks, recreation, roads, transit, et cetera, which have given us guidance out to the year 2031. Right now, the region is going through a process to establish the the forecasts going out 20, 30 years. And with that information, the town will be looking to do detailed master plans to support that population. So until we have completed that process, we are still staying with the old forecasts and the old infrastructure, or the old infrastructure identified by those older master plans. This probably will be updated within the 5-year period in order to reflect the latest and greatest infrastructure requirements. Next slide. This just represents building permit activity. You can see over the last 10 years, that's the in the black. We've gone from a low of 733 units, which was coming out of that economic downturn, and have been as high as almost 3,000 units last year. And you can see the average over the next 10 years will reach the targets that we talked about. So on average, we're running at about 1,800 units per year. Next slide. The services included are consistent with the prior bylaw. Services related to a highway are basically your roads, sidewalks, active transportation, etc. We have fire, transit, parks and rec, library, bylaw enforcement, and then growth-related studies. I would note that municipal parking is currently in the town's bylaw, but it, as a result of changeover in legislation, it will be removed because it will no longer be an eligible service. Next slide. This is the current charges in effect. You can see for a single family, we're at just under $46,000, so $45,900. You can see a lower charge for multiples, which is the medium density, and then we have 3 categories of apartments: larger apartments, which are 2 bedrooms plus; smaller apartments, bachelor in 1 bedroom or less than 2 bedrooms, and then a special care type of dwelling unit, which would be reflective of, let's say, a Chartwell seniors type of residence. So we've developed a charge which would give you the lowest persons per unit. And then the non-residential charge, once again, expressed on a cost per square foot. The updated charges, on the next slide, please. You'll see it's a minor reduction. For the singles, roughly about $600 per square foot. So we've gone through to update the costing with staff, make some refinements to the project listing, et cetera. And at the end of the day, there's been a minor reduction with respect to the development charges. And on the next slide, please. We'll provide you with, you can see where the adjustments have been made. A slight reduction in the services related to a highway. So that's reduced by about $800. You can see a little bit of plus and minuses as we go through the services. And we've removed the parking. So the second to last line is removal of the parking because it'll no longer be eligible. And with the introduction of bylaw enforcement. So at the end of the day, roughly a $600 reduction in the overall charge. On the next slide, just gives you the non-residential, and you can see there's a reduction on a cost per square foot as well for industrial, commercial, and institutional development. Next slide. And graphically, we just wanted to present comparison of the charges in different areas across the GTA. You can see the arrows that are here are representing the reduction in the calculated charge. Once again, for a single detached unit, it's $600. Why there's 2 different charges here is because the region has 2 different charges. One within the existing built boundary, and then another within what they define as the greenfields. So the red charges on the bottom represent the upper tiers. The green is the local municipalities, and we've also included the blue, which is the education charges. So the highest charges right now, Markham and Vaughan, are in and around the $140,000 range for a single detached. You've got within King City running at about $128,000, and then Oakville running about $119,000 in total for the Greenfield area, and the existing built boundary just below $100,000 for a single detached unit. Next slide, please. Similar type of comparison when we're taking a look at commercial. You can see that we're experiencing a reduction on a cost per square foot. And once again, there's two different charges based on how the region has categorized their developments. Next slide. And industrial is at a somewhat lower level. Many municipalities either calculate the industrial on a slightly different manner or provide, in some cases, some reductions. So the cost per square foot for industrial quite often is lower than that for, let's say, commercial. Next slide. So that concludes my presentation, Mr. Mayor. Once again, we'd be looking to come back on July 12th for consideration of the bylaw.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scannion. I would like to know if when you come back, council could see a cost for each of those exemptions. You know, there were many lines of exemptions, and I think it would be useful for council and the public to see what each exemption costs, because those exempt costs presumably then fall on the taxpayer.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Would there be any problem with that?
I think we can work with staff. Some of them, some of those exemptions we can calculate because they're within the growth forecast. Others, we'll take a look at what you provided over the past 5 years and extrapolate it out 10 years, and I'm sure we can give you that those figures.
Thank you very much. I'd find that very useful. And we have questions for you, starting off with Councillor Elgar and then Councillor Giddings. Councillor Elgar?
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton, I appreciate the presentation. One part that's missing is it's kind of what the mayor was talking about. The last time we received a cost of growth in Halton Region, a scenario from the former Commissioner of Finance and Regional Treasurer at the region of Halton, and they said that annually Oakville was subsidizing growth to the tune of $16,210,000 a year. Do you know what that figure is now?
No, I don't. No, not offhand.
Would you be able to bring that back when you come back with the presentation?
So through the mayor, is this the figures that were provided to Halton Region specifically, or because I know that Halton Council had asked for that with respect to their services. I'm just not quite sure whether that one's solely for them or if that includes other municipalities.
Well, it includes Halton Region was $14,076,000. That's what we're subsidizing the region. Burlington, we were subsidizing $2,614,000. Oakville, $16,210,000. Milton, $11,407,000. Halton Hills, $7,697,000. The Halton School Boards, $35,717. Total was $87,721,000 for between the municipal, the school boards, and the region itself. So if you could even bring something back for Oakville, that would be really fantastic. They split it out by exempt, service level calculations, the 10% discount, and the mandatory exemptions. That was the breakdown they gave at that time.
And was that most recently, or was that going back a few years, Councillor?
No, that was August the 11th, 2017.
Correct. Okay. Now, thank you. I know the document that you're talking about. I don't think that was updated, but I can take a look and try and isolate it specifically for Oakville and try and provide you that information.
I really appreciate that, because I think people should know that growth doesn't cover the cost it takes. So I thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned that the exemption costs fall on the existing taxpayers. And could you just go through that briefly again in terms of development charges are supposed to cover the cost of growth. And from the sounds of it and from Councillor Outliar's statement, there's quite a substantial shortfall. Could you just run through that briefly again for people that may be watching?
Absolutely. So in simple terms, let's say we were going to build a project, let's call it a road. And in that particular case, we expected to recover 100% of the cost from development. So in this example, let's say it's a $100 road and we wanted to collect all of it. If there are mandatory exemptions that the province says that we cannot collect for, so if we look at that, maybe that translates into 3, 4, 5%. So in trying to fund that project and we spread it across all development, maybe 5% we can't collect for because the province said you cannot do it. So then first instance, you have to fund, it's a revenue shortfall to fund that project. So you're shy $5 against a $100 project. And as council exempt make provisions for additional types of development, then that may translate into another $3, $4, $5. So once again, that's a lost revenue. So we have a $100 project, and from what we can collect after all these different deductions, we're only collecting $90. There's a $10 gap. So the development charges all relate back to individual projects. So exemptions mean that there's a lost funding revenue, and that has to be picked up from a funding source, which is probably the existing taxpayer.
I appreciate that. In your presentation, you mentioned that the bylaw is updated on a regular basis. What do we do in times such as this, when the cost of infrastructure, whether it be labor or materials, is increasing so rapidly, as we recently saw with a couple of grade separations? How is that accounted for?
So when we move, so through you, Mr. Mayor, when we do the estimates and we're looking forward on like a forward forecast, prices may be more than what we estimated, prices may be less. So there's always going to be a variance from the specific amount that we identified. Excuse me. If it's significant, then the municipality may consider updating the bylaw sooner. If it's if it's not significant, however we define not significant, then you would continue on with the charges. Now, I would note that the charges are indexed. Once you pass the bylaw, they are indexed based on Stats Canada Construction Cost Index. And what that index does is it tracks tender prices. So in the last year, it's jumped up by over 17%. So it's not perfect, depending on the mixture of services that you're providing, but it does try and track the trends in the prices. So those are things that staff should monitor and then consider whether there is a required update or whether they're satisfied with the order of magnitude of differences. And you would still charge that project. It would just mean that we'll pick up the minor shortfalls in the next DC update.
Great, thank you. And last question, municipalities in the Greater Toronto, the GTHA, are provided forecasts for growth. And we hear from a number of people that if the municipalities were to reduce the development charges, the cost of housing would be able to be decreased and made more affordable. What happens with that money if we can't have development charges on the homes or apartments that are being built? Where does that money come from?
Well, if you, let's say, at an extreme went with a zero development charge, that means that 100% of that infrastructure to support growth would be funded by your existing taxpayer. So that it's always been an interesting debate, and it's always been advanced that, gee, if you reduce the development charge, there'll be a reduction in the cost of a house. We've normally seen that the cost of a house is tracked by trends. And it's not always clear how each developer takes the development charge and integrates it into the cost of the house or the selling price. So there's always been a little bit of confusion in that, and I don't believe it's just to say, well, do away with development charges and the prices will drop by the equivalent amount. I have experienced municipalities who have chosen to reduce or eliminate the development charge, and I have to say I didn't see a one-on-one reduction in the price of the house.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. Having heard all comments, this public meeting is now closed. Council would urge the public to submit their comments in writing prior to July 12th, 2022. Council consideration of the development charges bylaw is scheduled to occur on July 12th, 2022. It would now be in order for a motion that the staff report dated June 7th, entitled Development Charges Background Study from the Finance Department, be received, and that the minutes of the Development Charge Steering Committee meeting on April 22nd be approved. Councillor Knoll, thank you for your motion. Is there an objection? There being none, that motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We now turn to the report, strategic plan accomplishments from 2019 to 2022. Julie Clark is available for to present if requested. Otherwise, you have your report, and I am at your disposal, Council. What do you want to do? The indicated motion is to receive it, and Councillor O'Meara.
Happy to receive, Your Worship.
Thank you. Is there an objection to the motion? There being none, that carries. Thank you, everybody. The next is the North Park development update for the community center, library, and park. Colleen Bell has an introduction to this, and Brent Copeland, the acting senior manager operations, will present, and we have staff available for questions. Ms. Bell, Commissioner Bell, you have the floor and the Zoom and our attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very pleased to introduce Brent Copeland, who will be providing you with an update on what's happening with the North Park development. The report that is before you will cover a number of topics. It will identify all of the amenities and the community investment that will go into this destination space. North Park is going to be one of the great indoor-outdoor parks and recreation facilities and will be known regionally and will be widely used. It's absolutely outstanding. A great deal of effort has gone into the planning of North Park from the standpoint of active transportation, energy efficiency initiatives. We have looked at ways to mitigate cost. As it is identified in this report, we are going to be asking for additional dollars. This report outlines the reasons why, but we also have put mitigation in place so that we have been able to contain costs of just over $12 million. We also deal with the radio tower issues that have been a longstanding question, and we also speak to the public consultation that we did with local residents and continue to receive excellent feedback in terms of how people want to use the space going forward. So without further ado, I turn it over to Brent.
Thank you, Colleen. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. I'm pleased to be here tonight to speak to the North Park Development Project. This is a very exciting community infrastructure project, and I've been honored to be part of the team working on the new community center, library, and park. I do have a short presentation to highlight the exciting amenities planned, as well as some of the challenges we have worked on so far through the project. I don't know if I can control the, could I get next slide, please? So what you're looking at here is the master plan of the site, and as you can see, there are many great amenities planned. This design follows the recommendations in the 2017 5-year review of the 2012 Parks, Recreation, and Library Facilities Master Plan. So just thought I'd orient you on the site here. At the bottom of the screen here, you'll see the Niagala Boulevard, and just above it, the existing sports complex. I'm not sure if I can use this. Oh, I can use this mouse, actually. So this is the existing facility here, the existing parking kind of surrounding that, and then the 2 existing sport fields. So everything else on this property is new. So the new community center runs here just along Niagala Boulevard. It's full facing on Niagala, and all the program amenities will look out there. We're going to have a beautiful front entrance, pedestrian entrance off of Niagala to attract all the pedestrians walking to the facility. Coming in through the park entrance here, we've introduced a traffic calming circle. So this is new for the site, to slow down traffic and really concentrate on protecting the pedestrians that may be walking or cycling across these entranceways to get over to the park and the facility. So once you come in, you can turn right, you can access the parking, this is all new, or come over to the facility. We do have a drop-off area right in here, so you could circle around, drop off an individual, or there's accessible parking here as well, and then go and park your car. The main entrance off the parking area is right here, and at the north end of this area is the library facility. We have introduced a large parking area just at the back here. There's about 240 parking spots here, which the thought is to take off the pressure. Once this parking lot fills up, this is the existing one, the arena users park here. Adding this additional parking at the back will free up this entire lot to support the new community center and library and overflow for the park. The park amenities, you'll see two new sport fields. There's going to be one that's natural turf, and there's one that's going to be synthetic turf. And in this area, there's a big cluster of fun amenities planned. There'll be an outdoor fitness area that's actually being moved. That's right now currently probably sitting right about here. Is going to be moved over to the park area. There'll be a field house, a splash pad, a skateboard plaza and bowl, a playground, a bike pump track, which is brand new for Oakville and pretty cool, an off-leash dog park, and a cricket field. Phase 2 of the development includes the, pending approval, is the basketball courts here, the pickleball. We have 7 outdoor pickleball courts, 4 tennis courts, and 4 sand beach volleyball courts. If I could get the next slide, please. So this is the ground floor of the new community center, and I'd like to acknowledge our architectural firm on this project, Diamond Schmidt Architects. I believe they've done a fabulous job of translating the community needs into a thoughtful design. Using the design intent by providing the look and feel and flow of one complex, the existing double height galleria, which you see right here coming from the arena, flows right through the main community center and reaches the Niagala, the new Niagala entrance. So you're going to have beautiful views of glazing into the 2 main amenities, into the large gymnasium, as well as the double tank aquatic natatorium. We will be going with the design that has been well received at Oakville Trafalgar Community Center to have the universal design change rooms, 2 change rooms to support the pool area. Following this corridor that comes along, we will take you to the north of the facility, the north entrance from the parking lot, as well as the large 18,000 square foot library. This is going to be beautiful. It's going to be double height windows right in here. This will all be double height, and there'll be an upper mezzanine that wraps around here. So this has all the amenities, all the creative spaces, and outdoor children's play area. It's going to be fantastic. If I could get the next slide, I'll show you the upstairs. So the upstairs of the facility is going to have a large walking track and that will circle right around the large gymnasium, but it will also have views into the pool natatorium as well, right here into the galleria, and then on this wall out to the exterior looking over Niagala. And then the whole area you'll be looking into the gym. So pretty lots to look at when you're doing your walk or run. We will have an indoor fitness area right here with weight and cardio machines, a fitness studio, as well as 4 large multi-purpose rooms. And multi-purpose is really the nature that we're trying to achieve here in being able to serve for all ages and abilities in these rooms. And we've had lots of conversations with different groups, including our seniors groups, which we are planning to provide dedicated times available during the daytime for them to have social connections in that room, and then venture off to other areas to provide more activity-based programming. So those rooms you'll see along that far wall do have a large storage area available. So it will help with transition of the space, so we can have seniors activities during the day and a setup that they're comfortable with. And then we can transition that space in the evening to more of a children, adults programming in the afternoon or in the evening. This room right here, sorry, the mouse is frozen, will have a retractable wall, so it can be divided into 2 rooms, or it can be opened up into 1 if we want to have a large gathering. And there's also a washroom off this room here. And then right over to the north is the library. So you can see here, this is the mezzanine space with meeting space and individual areas overlooking this big, beautiful library. So quite nice. Next slide, please. So the new community center and library will follow the example set by Oakville Trafalgar Community Center by integrating renewable energy and low carbon technologies that can greatly reduce the carbon emissions associated with the annual operations of the facility while ensuring operational costs are minimized. There are several key investments planned to help the community center and library achieve a net zero carbon and low energy use standard, as well as attain LEED Silver. Similar to Oakville Trafalgar, we are planning for this new facility to use geothermal heating and cooling. We are planning for the geothermal field will be large enough to serve both the new addition as well as the existing arena facility. There will be a future capital request submitted to retrofit the existing arena into a geothermal system so that the entire facility will be operating in the same efficient manner. The new building is being designed to allow for full photovoltaic array on the roof, and we also planning to reclaim the waste heat produced by the refrigeration equipment and use it to heat the pool water. Currently, the arena complex reuses this heat in a number of ways, including warming the arena seats and melting the snow outside our main entrances. We'll now be able to use excess capacity to help the heat the swimming pool. We will also be using daylight harvesting technology, which uses sensors to adjust interior lights when outdoor light increases to an appropriate level. Next slide, please. Active transportation and accessibility. So the main pedestrian entrance off Niagala was thoughtfully designed to be inviting, support North Oakville's walkable community initiative, and promote the use of alternative modes of transportation. With the growth of North Oakville, we foresee the community center and library being a popular walking and cycling destination. The team has thoughtfully included feature amenities that support pedestrian and cycling activities such as bicycle parking, bicycle repair station, rest areas, bottle fillers, and washroom facilities. We have collaborated with Oakville's Accessibility Advisory Committee to ensure the grounds achieve Oakville's Universal Design Standard guidelines for accessibility. The site has been designed with a focus on public health and safety and barrier-free and accessible design features. We have even exceeded accessible parking counts. Pedestrian safety has been a guiding design principle with the introduction of traffic calming circle at the main entrance and raised speed tables that act as pedestrian first crossings. We feel this will slow down the vehicular traffic and provide pedestrians the right of way at crossing intersections. Next slide, please. So the project funding. So the total project cost based on detailed design, facility configuration requirements, site limitations, and current construction and supply conditions is $106.1 million. This represents $88.9 million for the community center and library and $17.2 million for the park development. I'm pleased to say that 95% of the funding is from development charges, and the remainder is funded from the capital reserve accounts listed, as well as federal grants. $33,088,300, which represents approximately 31% of the total project cost, is required to be added to the current capital funding, which right now sits at just over $73 million. Next slide, please. So we've seen quite a lot of cost escalation on this project. There are estimated costs to construct the facility and park have increased due to a number of factors. As you know, the construction market continues to face a shortage of skilled labor, supply chain delay issues, and continued upward pressure on the supply cost materials. Select materials incurring significant cost increases since last year include union labor, hardware, wood, steel, drywall, and fuel. All new construction projects are feeling these increases. Projects like the Carmen Corbison Community Center in Mississauga and Wabash Community Center in Toronto are seeing similar or higher square footage construction cost increases. There were also unforeseen challenges we encountered through the design process, which have increased the cost over what was originally estimated. Site conditions, facility configuration requirements, parking needs, stormwater mitigation, increased circulation needs, and traffic calming initiatives have all contributed to project cost escalation. And to provide an example, during the initial estimation for the project, the Oakville Trafalgar design was used to formulate the original estimate. However, early on in the project, the architect noted that the facility integration to the existing sports complex, the site grade, as well as the existing services require the new facility to have a rectangular design, which results in additional circulation space not required in a more square shape, such as Oakville Trafalgar. The rectangular shaping had a resulting increase in the square footage from what was originally forecasted, but it allows for efficiency of operation by placing the aquatic natatorium at the southern end of the facility, therefore enabling a shorter run for the heat recovery from the arena's refrigeration system. Next slide, please. The project team has worked hard to identify project risks and mitigate early on and look for design and construction efficiencies in order to drive down costs to further provide better value to the town. The team was able to avoid costs of the project of over $13 million. These efforts have helped to mitigate the cost pressures shown on the previous slide. An initial concept of erecting a parking structure on site was viewed as a project requirement in order to meet the volume of cars. Due to the significant cost of the structure, staff and consultants began a collaborative process to look for more efficient options. A traffic consultant was retained to study historical, current, and predicted traffic flow patterns around the site. Staff analyzed customer access points and predicted traffic patterns based on the time and day and seasonality. Following the collection of all required information, a collaborative inter-project team was formed to analyze all options and provide a final recommendation, which was a reconfiguration of the site amenities to allow for expanded parking to the west. This detailed and collaborative approach ultimately resulted in a plan that is more customer-friendly, while concurrently reducing project costs significantly with an estimated cost avoidance of $12 million. We also look for ways within the project to reuse parts of infrastructure within the community center. An example of this is using the existing exit stair at the northeast corner, which saved the construction of a new exit stair at the exterior, which would require foundation and envelope and substantial rework of the existing facade. This is an estimated cost avoidance of another $160,000. Another example is reusing the existing 16-mile elevator shaft rather than building a new two-stop elevator within the new community center. And that was planned in the initial design, and we looked for a reconfiguration and saved another cost avoidance of another $60,000. The park was very much the same. They looked for all the park amenities and structures were designed proficiently to make efficient use of the space with a reduction in materials and labor costs. Next slide, please. Public consultation for this project was initiated this past winter. Residents were given widespread opportunities to provide feedback on how they'll utilize the wide range of amenities planned for the site. In March, a promotional video was released to share information on the upcoming development plans. To date, the video has been viewed more than 4,000 times. Following the success of the video, 2 virtual public consultation sessions were held in late March. Attendees received a detailed presentation from project architects and then selected from multiple smaller group discussions, breakout sessions to provide programming input. Feedback received to date has been overwhelmingly positive, giving a strong indication that the amenities planned for the site are in keeping with resident desires. Further public engagement is planned for social media campaigns, online surveys, and additional web content detailing project development updates. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide this high-level update on the project, and I'd like to now open it up for questions. If I can get the next slide, please. I do have David Dow, principal at Diamond Schmidt Architects, on the call. If you should have any design-related questions, he'd be happy to answer, or I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Copeland. You've generated a few questions. Let me ask you to carefully point your microphone toward your mouth so that from now on you'll be speaking into the microphone. That will help the public hear you and understand you better.
Sorry about that.
And we will start off with Councillor O'Meara, and for all I know, we'll go through the entire council.
All right.
Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Looks fantastic. I have 2 questions. Sports field 3 and 4, will those be lit sport fields?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe 3 and 4 will be lit.
Perfect. That's an awesome answer. And lastly, where are the, I don't see on the map here the little page that we've got where the washrooms, are there outdoor washrooms around the sports field, or are there water water fountains or filling stations near the sports field or cricket pitch in that area?
Yes, both, through you, Mr. Mayor, both Councillor O'Meara, there's going to be a field house which will have washrooms and change facilities as well as water filling stations in that central area where all those activity amenities are placed.
Okay, and that will be open through the evenings for people using the fields and everything? They'll have access to that?
Yes, sir.
Perfect, it looks great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Duddick?
Thank you, Worship. Very, very exciting. I appreciate the presentation because several of the concerns I had were addressed through the course of the presentation, namely that of the seniors. My concern being there's an awful lot of intergenerational families more and more, especially in these younger areas, where there may be a senior accompanying a small child to events and things of that nature. So I think it's really crucial that we include everybody, and it appears like you've done exactly that. The question I do have in regards to the pedestrian access off Niagala, and the reason being, I'm looking at the crosswalks either at the main one farther down, or there's one that goes into the center. What's the distance from the crosswalk to that pedestrian access off Niagala?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, looking at David Dow, do you by chance know the meters, David? We can get back to you if not.
Yeah, we'd have to get back to you with an exact answer. I'm guessing it's in the range of 35 meters, maybe 40. It's not from the intersection to the southeast of the facility.
Okay, okay. I guess my concern was, again, safe access for those we are trying to encourage that pedestrian access. So that was crucial. And I guess the only other thing I would ask, and maybe it's a little premature, of our town staff, if we've considered any kind of sponsorship of any of the key developers in the area to possibly offset the costs of a room and undergoing something similar to our sponsorship, naming rights for facilities. I'm just thinking it's a good opportunity for them to demonstrate the community support and also assist in the overall cost. So I'll leave that with staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Adams?
Thank you very much. And it's great project work that's going on and very impressive movement forward. The overhead maps that you've shown and the other diagrams are very impressive. I've got 3 questions for you, 2 of them dealing with the choice of which setup of facilities we're incorporating. The first one is the pickleball courts. I see that we've got a set that are towards the back of the space, and I've had some discussions with some pickleball users who would like to have even more. And I wondered if we had considered having a 12-pack of pickleball courts in that location instead of the 7-pack I think that we've got showing. And if not, why not? And what are the give and takes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the site actually has 13 pickleball courts on it. There's 6 indoors and 7 outdoors. That's actually, from the initial designs, more than I believe what they were planning. I think there was only 4 initially stated, and now we're up to 7. There are a number of site constraints on the site. As you've seen, there are quite a lot of amenities on there. We would have to take that back to see if there's any opportunity to add any more.
Okay, so and I was talking about the outdoor ones, of course. I understand that we can use the indoor space in a variety of different ways, but it was the outdoor ones I was speaking of. And the discussion I had referred to the, I guess there's a set of landscaping trees that separate the courts from the parking lot, and I think that was the target space that the individual was thinking about. And there was also some consideration about whether they could organize themselves into a pickleball association to help offset or fund or pay an ongoing use fee for courts, I think. I don't know whether staff have had any discussions in that regard.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's still a little premature at this point, but we certainly can engage with them to have those discussions.
Great, okay. And then my second question is for many, many years, there's been discussions about 50-meter pools bandied about, and this might be the last large pool that we build for some time. Have staff had discussions about the 50-meter pool with user groups? And I think I know the answer why, but maybe you can enumerate them for us as to why we're using our standard 25-meter pool in this design. And I presume that given the inflated costs that we're seeing in construction of 50-meter pools, costs would also be inflated, I presume.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, absolutely right on the cost increases, and we have collaborated quite extensively with the Oakville Aquatic Club on the design of the pool area. You'll know that with this pool, we're planning on potentially looking at other models for White Oaks Pool. So the Oakville Aquatic Club has taken on more time at White Oaks, and we are in early conversations about what that may look like when this new pool facility comes online. So they were content with the 25-meter pool on this site as well.
Great. Okay, that's wonderful to hear that discussion that's been going on. My last area of questioning was I had some feedback about our architectural design work. And at the very end of the presentation, I saw the slide that showed the outdoor view of the building, and the resident that contacted the ward 6 councillors anyway felt that the design could be even more exciting. How about that? I'll leave it there because architecture is often in the eye of the beholder. But what choices did we consider in our architectural design, and what kind of input did members of the public have, or could they have had, with respect to different detailing of the building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll involve David Dow in this question. David, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, obviously the question of aesthetics is, as you pointed out, a very difficult one that lots of opinions. Some of the earlier images that we had circulated and that I think have been seen by the public were very preliminary. And since then, the design has definitely evolved. Design, despite what might be projected by some architects, isn't a kind of thunderbolt genius stroke from afar, but in fact is an evolutionary process that we go through to kind of evolve and improve and hone the design. I believe the design has progressed very, very well. We've modified some of the earlier imagery where the building was quite flat, and now the facade, the face of the building, has an articulation to it with where we've colored one side of this articulated panel, so that when you're approaching the building and moving around the building, the colors and the light reflections change. So I think the effect is going to be incredibly dynamic. I think as you progress around the building, your perception of the building will change significantly and will make it extremely interesting and engaging with the public. Not sure if there's more I could add to that. I don't know if I've totally answered your question, but feel free to go at me again if you think I
mostly
haven't.
answered it. Maybe I'll ask you one area of questioning on the architecture. Was there any consideration given to trying to create a more of a heritage look and feel to the exterior of the building?
To be honest and frank about it, not really. Don't forget, we're dealing with this building as effectively an addition to an existing building, the 16-mile arena. And so I think it's far more important that we are harmonious and relate to that relationship. And so really we were given a context, if you like, that we were trying to work with. And so finding an aesthetic, finding a look that will sit comfortably with that existing facility was really the main driver in the building aesthetics.
Great. Thank you so much for your responses and the other staff members as well. I appreciate all of that information, and I look forward to the future work.
Councillor Longo?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this is a great design, and Mr. Copeland, just had a quick question, and maybe Mr. Dow can answer as well. But on the cricket pitch, is there a buffer to Niagala? Because I pretended that my first sport was cricket, not very good at it, but some people can bat, and the bats or the batters, is there kind of a buffer or some kind of a screen so the ball isn't hit onto Niagala? Just out of curiosity, is that a consideration? But I think it's fantastic that there is actually a cricket pitch now integrated into the design of North Park. So that's my first question.
Thank you, Councillor Longo. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do see Frank Leconte, the landscape architect on this project. I will defer to Frank.
Great, thank you, Brent. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Longo, yes, we've considered a very significant buffer around the cricket pitch. We're definitely being mindful of it being a well-used park. The cricket pitch itself is a 130-meter pitch or field, and then we have towards Niagala about another 40 meters. So the original design actually had a lot less buffer, and we've kind of morphed and evolved the plans to increase the buffer significantly. And in the future, we may consider putting up some fencing, but we're working closely with the cricket pitch club or cricket club to determine if that's even needed.
Okay, great, thank you. My second question, Mr. Copeland, and I think the climate change considerations are excellent, and I think already proven with the Oakville Trafalgar Rec Center. When it comes to kind of things like building materials, is there a way to try and consider using reclaimed wood or other things? And I'm thinking of the Fire Station 8 in Ward 4, where a lot of the wood is reclaimed. Is there a way of trying to reclaim or reuse items? That you mentioned a stairwell and an elevator, I think shaft from 16 Mile Creek Arena. But are there other examples that you can use to try and reuse as part of the building and design?
Thanks, Councillor Longo. Through you, Your Worship. David, I'll defer to you on this one again.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Brent. We're always interested in making the building as sustainable as possible. That's a very strong agenda of ours. I can't say that we currently have items that we are reusing or recycling, but we're certainly open to that. It does come with a little bit of a complication from our end, just to the logistics of securing the materials and then reusing the materials can be quite complex, but it's certainly something we've done in the past and we'd be totally open to. I can't point to an example currently, though, in the building, to be fair.
Okay, that's fair. And then just my last question is kind of related to that. You mentioned the cost or the estimated cost for the project. Is that already been out to market and tendered, or is that an estimate of what the costs are?
That's an estimate.
Okay, so are there just thoughts and mechanisms of trying to figure out how to, because we're talking about building in a couple of years, like this is not going to happen overnight. So, is there any hope of either capping costs when it comes to materials, or looking at things like reclaimed or reused to try and bring down those costs without being able to predict the future, of course, but it's
right.
Just consideration as part of the tendering process.
I think our intent is to be under construction sooner than a couple of years. So hopefully we can move faster than that. We are certainly, the prices we all know are escalating significantly. It's something we're well aware of in our industry, and we are doing everything we can to try and reduce those overages. There are, we're constantly evaluating different materials. It's a tricky landscape. certain materials spike higher and others crater, and then the reverse happens a month later. So it's a very, very tricky environment we're in right now. Very unlike what we've been experiencing for the last decade or more in the past. So we're constantly monitoring and looking for alternatives that can ensure that we control the costs. Certainly, we try to design the building and specify the materials to give options, because when there's options, then we can make quick choices at the end when the prices are more apparent. So a lot of that thinking is happening during the production of our documentation package to try and control the costs.
Okay, excellent. And I just, from experience working with your firm at St. Mike's Hospital and other venues, I know your firm is very good at considering that as part of that design and going out to tender. So appreciate it. Those are all my questions, Your Worship. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knoll, you're up.
Thank you, Worship. I have a few questions here. First of all, I just want to say it's been great fun to work on this project through the library board. We've been able to, at the board, have some input on the design of the library, and we appreciated that opportunity. It's going to be a terrific facility, and looking forward to seeing all of it, particularly that piece done. A couple questions though. With respect to public transit, what is the connectivity or I guess the opportunity around using public transit to get people there? I didn't really see that there's any kind of transit facility within the complex. What is the anticipated access for transit at this facility? Would it just be lay-by on Niagala? How do you anticipate that's going to work?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the current setup right now will be planned. I don't know of any changes to that right now. We had that early conversations with Oakville Transit, though, about the smaller buses, accessible buses, that sort of thing, providing access and having a hub point at the facility, as well as electric bus charging stations available there for them as well.
So within the actual grounds of the facility, there'll be some sort of transit facility there, some sort of hub?
Correct.
Where is that on the drawing? I guess I missed that.
They call it I may say it wrong, but a PODU location, and it will be just at that front entrance there where individuals will be able to wait for their designated time to be picked up. I believe that would be pre-arranged.
Oh, so it wouldn't necessarily be for scheduled service. It would be for the on-demand busing facility?
Correct, through the caravan service.
Is there a plan, though, however, for a regular scheduled bus access? I'm obviously the larger buses, probably with the current configuration of the driveway, would be able to get in there. But what about accessing the facility with our current and future scheduled service? Is there some sort of lay-by? Is there some access anticipated from Niagala that would provide quick access to the pedestrian entrance at the front of the building? What's the plan there?
So right now, there's no plans to get into the facility proper, but I can't speak on behalf of transit, but there could be plans for a Niagala entrance. As you mentioned there, the access point from Niagala is very close, and there could be a drop-off point very near to that.
Is it possible to get some feedback on that later on? I mean, as we continue to build our transit fleet and our transit service in the town, it would be good to have, I guess, to lay in the infrastructure, whatever that is, to be able to get people in and out with public transit, particularly adding some additional access and mobility for the young folks in town that don't necessarily drive.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. We will respond back to you on that, Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. What is the maximum capacity of the function rooms on the second floor? I know what they are for the libraries, but you showed, I think, 4. I don't have the plan on my computer at the moment, but I think you had 4 function rooms, multi-purpose rooms on the second floor. Was that accurate?
Correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are 4 multi-purpose rooms on the second floor, each approximately 1,000 square feet, with one of the 2 rooms having a self-dividing space to open up to a maximum of around approximately 2,000 square feet.
Okay, and what would the capacity be? Do you know what the capacity would be for that, for public meetings or for special events?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would all depend on the setup of that room, you know, depending on tables, chairs, that sort of thing, if it's a program nature or not. But I believe the capacity is around 100 to just maybe a little bit less than 100, given the max capacity that would be a theater type setting.
Thank you. I'm looking at the skateboard area and those like unstructured play areas, and I'm wondering what consideration was given for CPTED or crime prevention through environmental design with respect to where those are located versus the I guess the eyes on from the street kind of scenario that is so important in providing for that environmental crime prevention.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Frank, defer to you on this.
Great, thanks, Brent. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We did definitely consider the siting of the skateboard park. You can see that there's a ring road that goes in and out of the site. And we've left the landscape open to be visible from Niagala Boulevard. So yes, there is going to be natural surveillance with the fields being utilized late into the evening and nighttime, but also if a patrol or a officer would like to drive in, they can drive in and get quick access to those amenities. So yes, there is definitely good views to the park. We've left the park kind of open and visible from Niagala.
Invisible or visible?
Visible.
Yeah, so the only thing, so between Niagala and the those unstructured play areas, there's a pumping station in front, and then there's the dog walk, and then there's those areas. So I'm looking at it, doesn't look to be all that visible, but I'll defer to your expertise, and I guess some of that would be impacted by elevations and such as well. So I would just put a pin in that one just to consider how you could mitigate those potential risks, whether it be through additional cameras, surveillance, or whatever the case is, just to make sure that we don't have a scenario where that becomes an opportunity for crime and vandalism. What's a pump track?
So it's a bicycle facility. It's an asphalt surface with an undulating surface similar to a BMX track, but it's a little more formal, more accommodating to a wider range of users and abilities. So, a skateboarder could use it, a rollerblader could use it, a scooter could use it, and of course a BMXer could use it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard that term before, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. Have we considered laying in the infrastructure? I don't know what the current plan is for EV charging in the parking lots. Have we laid in infrastructure for the inevitable growth of EV charging requirements going forward? Is that something that has been considered in terms of the design of the parking lots?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. We have electric vehicle charging stations already in the plan.
How many do you have now, and what kind of allowances have you given for infrastructure and capacity for future growth?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe, and I'm looking at David, I think we have 10 on site currently.
Oh,
David,
wow.
do you know offhand?
To be honest with you, Brent, I don't know the exact number, but it's around 10. You're close, if not bang on. And we've had all kinds of discussions about how to put in infrastructure for expansion for in that.
Okay, so that's top of mind then. So you're considering how to, okay, because I mean invariably, that's going to be expanding as time goes on, and we need to be ready for that. And my last question is with respect to future growth. You mentioned the fact that the concept of structured parking was considered and rejected, I guess because of cost, etc. But is there
Councillor
some
Knoll,
thought given?
Councillor Knoll, excuse me, I beg your pardon for interrupting you. We're having connectivity issues. The public are not able at the moment to hear and enjoy your comments. And so we're going to recess for 5 minutes while we reconnect to the internet.
Yes, I want them to be able to enjoy my comments. Thank you.
Council, please stand by for better connectivity. This is resuming, having had a brief recess while the the technicians reestablished our connectivity, as they say. When we lost contact with the internet, Councillor Knoll was redesigning the project for you, and we will now resume Councillor Knoll's adjustments to the design. Councillor Knoll.
Yeah, I'll show you my architectural degree later. No, I wasn't really to redesign, just some questions. I just had some issues I wanted to address. The last one I had and I was about to ask about was with respect to the future of the site itself. I know that the concept behind the parking garage was considered and dismissed. I'm wondering if there was if there's any allowances or consideration being given to actually laying in future-proofing infrastructure for a future structural parking facility in the future, should we need additional facilities on property that we would obviously put in a parking lot area. So is that being considered for the future? And if so, are we doing some of the legwork or the spade work now so that we don't have to start from scratch later?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we believe on the site right now we do have sufficient parking to meet the needs for current and growth. If you've been up at that facility during a tournament, previously you would have seen, cars parked everywhere, including on the grass, and we're very confident that will not be the case in this new design. We have not considered a location for a parking structure at this time, and that site would need to be looked at further if that were the case. And I believe, based on the site layout, that would require, amenity to come offline to support that need, unless we looked at something underground.
Ooh, that's really expensive.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And notwithstanding the mayor's friendly little poke, I am actually quite supportive of this project. I think you've all done a fabulous job. As I said, I've enjoyed having an opportunity to have input on it through our board as well, our library board. I think it's going to be a fabulous project. And as the councillor, one of the two councillors that used to represent this community before the redistribution of the wards, we were looking forward to this facility as councillors. And I can say that I'm just as excited as the neighboring councillor for our community to be able to enjoy this as well. So thank you for your hard work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson, it's your turn.
Thank you. First, I wanted to say thank you so much for working with the Seniors Working Advisory Committee or Advocacy Committee in terms of the seniors' needs at the facility. You've done a great job working with them and listening to them, and I know they appreciate that. I am going to follow up on Councillor Adams' pickleball piece. As an avid player myself and working with the Oakville Pickleball Association, I think this is a time when we have, if we have the ability to do it, this is the time to get the maximum number of outdoor courts as we can. At the growth rate of pickleball, in terms of being able to host tournaments and bring business to Oakville, bring people that stay for a tournament and things like that, it won't happen unless we have a good solid group. And if you've got room for the 14 there to double that, that would be a great thing to put on the agenda. So I would love for you to come back and think about that. I have a couple of questions in terms of pedestrian and cycling safety things. I know that there's an entrance going into the community center that faces Niagala. And people are going to cross the street at, I'm trying to look at that right now. At the main entrance where I know there's lights right now. I'm afraid of two things. When they come out of that main entrance that faces Niagala, is there a path that's going to lead straight over to that so they don't try to cross Niagala? And yes, please don't try to cross Niagala. And that worries me. Is there going to be a path there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, there will be accessible pathways, not only leading you to the front entrance, but also connecting up through the trail system to get into the entryway of the park area. So there'll be two entrances there at the Garden Brook location, which I believe you're referencing. There will be a crosswalk, but just further to the south, there's another intersection there at 16 Mile Drive. I believe users could cross there as well and then walk north, and there will be a sidewalk along there and a plaza. I think that connects right into the entry of the community center.
Okay, that's great. My other question goes with cycling. Is there a multi-use trail along Niagala there, or is it just Niagala in terms of biking?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Frank, are you still on the call to field that question?
There is a multi-use trail on the west side of Niagala Boulevard.
Okay, that's great. That answers that question for me, because I thought as parents want to get to the library and want to get to facilities and work out, and even all the soccer fields and everything, that keeping them off of Niagala would be great. So as long as that's there, I'm happy. So thank you so much. This has been a great plan and experience.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm, your turn.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple of quick questions with respect to the pool itself. I understand it's a rectangle, and I guess the first question, what was the logic with respect to doing a 25-meter rectangle versus a leisure type pool?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there is two tanks there, Councillor Chisholm. The one tank is the standard 6-lane, 25-meter pool to meet the needs of our aquatic club and our swimming programs, as well as the lane swimmers. The leisure pool, the warm water pool, what we're calling it, will be kept at 92 degrees. And it will be serving multiple needs, both from a therapeutic standpoint, a leisure standpoint, a swim lesson standpoint. So I think we've tried to achieve the best of both worlds. That rectangular pool will be used in a more leisure setting as well during our leisure swims.
Thank you for that answer. With respect to the depth of the pool, what is the depth of the pool? Water depth.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. I believe, and I'm looking at David to see if you have it, I think we decided on 8 feet, I want to say, for the lap pool. Am I correct on that, David? Do you have that offhand?
Muted. Sorry, I was muted for a moment. I'm afraid to say I don't have that number off the top of my head. I'm sorry, Brent. But it's 7 or 8 feet. I believe you're correct.
Through Your Worship. Yeah, I'm almost positive it's 8 feet. So I think I'll go all in on that, but I will let you know tomorrow if I'm incorrect.
So I would assume that there's not a diving program going into this pool.
There will not be, through Your Worship, there will not be a diving program. There will be diving blocks similar to our other pools to accommodate the needs of the Oakville Aquatic Club for their competitive training program.
Okay, I hate to get in the weeds. What's the pool deck, the width of the pool deck around the pool itself? Do you have that information?
Through you, Your Worship. David, do you have the plans handy?
I don't have the plans handy to show. It does actually vary depending on which side. When you come out of the change areas, it's a little deeper, and between the two pools is a little wider. We're in the range of 2.4 meters for most of it, which is in feet. That's 7.5 feet to 8 feet is the rough dimension, but it does vary. So that's not a constant dimension all the way around. In the more high traffic areas, it's wider, and in the quieter sides, it's a little narrower.
My next question, with respect to when the public and all the associations are involved in sport, whether it be swimming, soccer, any of those sports, is the intent to design these facilities that are recreational, what I call basic recreational activities, or are we looking at a high performance tournaments type programming in these facilities? And the reason I ask that question, I'll follow up with the comment after that.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. I can speak for the facility requirements, and they would be based out of a training requirement need. The pool is not for competitive it would be for competitive training, but not hosting competitive swimming. The gymnasium would be equipped. It's an NBA-sized basketball court running north-south, and then there's 2 high school courts running east-west, and we have at this facility designed it so that there would be spectator seating as well, so that could accommodate more, rep style sports. And if Frank's on the call, I'll let him speak to the park amenities.
Thanks, Brent. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The park is definitely able to accommodate tournaments. So there are, we did work with the lacrosse group, Halton Field Hockey, the Cricket Club, as well as minor lacrosse. So they do expect the opportunity to play tournaments at that facility. But at the same time, we've developed the park program to accommodate Oakville residents, demographic, age, all of that.
Has there been any consideration from the sport organizations to have some type of arrangement or a memorandum of understanding for possible storage or some type of identity within these park regime?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the user groups each have their own requirements, and if I'm getting your question wrong, please correct me. We are looking to provide some storage. They're not looking to do any branding or sponsorship. Was that the basis of your question?
Yes, in history, we have certain agreements with a sport organization, whether it be our gymnastics, our Oakville Aquatic Club, our tennis courts, and so forth. Is there, I might be ahead of too far on this, but with respect to any agreements that would be put into place for clubs on the site?
Not that I'm aware of. We haven't started that process, and no one has approached us about that yet.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of my questions, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Lischina, your turn.
Thank you, Your Worship. This was definitely an exciting project and a report. So Brent, thank you for presenting that. I just also wanted to follow up on Councillor Longo's comment about the cricket pitch. As you know, there's one in Ward 6, and we see how far they can hit that ball, and obviously it's not a proper size field. So I'm glad that the Oakville Cricket Club is being consulted. I was a little bit even more worried about where the kids' activities are and the balls going that way, because there's some pretty hard balls out there. So that would be a worry right from the beginning with respect to having either some kind of fencing or something to that effect. My next question is currently just the parking regarding the existing arena. And, I've been to a number of tournaments and, everybody wants the closest spot to the front entrance and that kind of thing. And now that we're going to have a community center right next door to it, my question is how are we able to direct traffic that would be related to the arena being behind it? So right now, the road that's coming out from, I guess, the southernmost, well, I guess right at the very corner, I'm looking at the picture that you had put up. And right now, is it both in and out or just out? I can't remember. There's a light there, right?
Correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I believe you're speaking with to the 16 Mile Creek Drive. That is the furthest one to the south, so that's taking you into the athlete entrance. The one a little bit further to the north is the Garden Brook entrance. So the athlete. So our thought process is the athletes. Once you've been to the facility once, you know that the athlete entrance is around the back, and that's where it fills up first, and then as that parking area gets filled up, they transition to the upper lot and then come in through the upstairs and then have to go back downstairs. So we're considering putting additional signage at that first entrance, the one to the south, to direct people into that southerly entrance. We've also expanded what is the gravel lot right now to make that fully paved and picked up additional parking spots there. So we're net up about 292 spots at the back of the building, which is comparable to what was on the north section of that property. So we're picking up a considerable amount of spots there.
I think there's going to be quite a bit of education on that. So if we could start earlier than later. But also the question is, can you also get into the community center from the back if you're parking in that same area where we just talked about?
No, great. Through you, Mr. Mayor, great question. So that the north, if you were parking on the westerly section, you certainly could come through the athlete entrance and then walk along the Galleria to the elevator, to the staircase, and straight up into the community center. Alternatively, if you wanted to park on the south section, you could park on what is known now as the gravel lot, and there will be a nice paved connection pathway from that lot right over into the front Niagala entrance. It's a short little walk.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, I guess my last point is I do want to give a shout out to Councillor Parmar and Councillor Sandu, because I do remember 4 years ago when they got elected, this was really a big thing on their plate, and their passionate advocacy for the last 4 years is certainly coming to fruition. So I want to congratulate both of them.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. And thank you, Natalia. That was just about what I was going to add, that while all of council should be proud that North Park has come to fruition, both our Ward 7 councillors deserve a real call out that they have got this on the table and will actually have construction starting next year. So I think it's marvelous. I just have, believe it or not, only 2 questions, because all of you have done just incredible. So one question is to put the minds at ease of those that were aware of radio transmissions and possible implications about radio transmissions from earlier discussions. Brent, can you just summarize for us, and probably are there any safety risks as a result of building on those lands?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for asking that, Councillor Haslett-Thiel. Post-construction, and this is directly from the Octave report received from the consultant, there's no mitigation as required with respect to potential health impacts in terms of Safety Code 6. So there's only conditions set forth during construction, and that is really due to the construction equipment that they're using as putting in that elevated area, and obviously using cranes and that sort of thing.
So thank you for that. And in terms of the crane operator, I don't believe we've chosen the construction company yet, have we? So there'll be full disclosure to those workers of the safety procedures that are being recommended, or they must follow for their own health and safety?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, absolutely. The copy of the report will be provided, and it's mainly with their communication equipment that they may be using on the site. As I understand it, the radio frequency when it leaves the tower kind of goes up, and it can affect the equipment they may be using at the time.
Okay, thank you. There were some other questions about just some of the facilities, and I just want to reinforce, I remember vividly council supporting a therapeutic pool for Oakville Trafalgar High School, or Oakville Trafalgar Community Center, and I can tell you it is well used. It is probably one of the highlights for some folks. So I'm glad to see a warm pool is there. Some people really do need it to stay active, and it can make a difference. That is all the comments I have, other than to congratulations to the architect, both landscape and building. It really is coming together to be just this amazing facility. And if no one else has put forward that they'd move the recommendation, I'd be prepared to do so.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton, to staff. just like to point out to staff, and I think it might have not been pointed out enough, climate action initiatives. If you read through what staff are proposing here, it's absolutely amazing. It's like the geo exchange heat pump. It's almost, I think they said net zero. Then they've got the solar voltaic. They've got the waste heat reclaim from 16 Mile Creek complex now, where they're going to reclaim the heat. Staff, what level are you shooting for this project?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are shooting for LEED Silver on this project.
What, based on what I'm reading, what would you do to go to LEED Gold?
It's
like,
through you, Mr. Mayor. It is possible we may achieve gold, but the standard set forth right now by the organization is LEED Silver for all of our new developments. But right now, I think we're tracking confidently for that, with probably shouldering on gold.
So we could end up as a gold for this facility when we're done, based on what you're proposing now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is potential of that.
I thank you to staff for pushing it this far. Excellent. That's all I have to say. Every other question I think has been done and redesigned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been moved by Councillor Haslett-Thiel. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that's carried. Thank you, everybody, and congratulations, one and all. The next item on our agenda is 9.4, the notice of motion with regard to the GTA West Corridor, sometimes known as Highway 413, which was a matter in front of the voters in the June 2nd provincial election, if I recall correctly. This matter is brought to us courtesy of Councillor Duddeck and Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Duddeck, you have the floor, the Zoom, and our attention.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just was quite keen to bring this forward to join our immediate neighbors in Burlington and Mississauga in expressing their concerns and their opposition in regards to moving this forward. The highway would pave over 400 acres of green space and over 2,000 acres of class 1 and 2 of farmland. And the highway would bisect the sensitive 4 watersheds of the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation territory. And as you can see from quite a lengthy motion, it entails the various concerns, whether it be the 407, whether or not they've exhausted every opportunity before undergoing this construction. So as I say, I'd like to, with our neighbors to the west and the east, along with former Mayor David Crombie, in expressing our concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Duddeck. Councillor Chisholm, your turn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not to belabor the point, it's well documented in our notice of motion, and with Councillor Duddeck's comments, covers it very well. So I will just leave it as that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any objection to the motion?
Your
Madam
Worship,
Clerk?
I have a recorded vote.
All right. Councillor Duddeck, would you like a roll call, or would you be satisfied with us listing everyone present as in favor, given that no one objected?
That's fine. That's fine.
Madam Clerk, could you do that?
Oh, sure.
The clerk has agreed, so we've saved a minute. Thank you, everybody. And I declare that carried. Now, Council, we now come to our last item, which is a confidential item. And so what we need is a motion that the confidential, let's see if I got this right. Oh, I see. Thank you for your patience. We need a motion that Council resolve into a closed meeting session to deal with item 10.1, OEC update legal, and 10.2 OEC update for the purpose of dealing with matters that are related to the security of the property of the municipality or local board, advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications needed for that purpose, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere, or a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations to be carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. I was looking down while I read that. Councillor Duddick, thank you for the motion. Is there any objection? There being no objection, council, that carries. And how about a quick recess for a bio break, and then we will, when the technical side of this is successfully done, we will resume the meeting. Why don't you take 10 minutes? Is that all right? We're in recess. All right. Hello again to the public. Council has met in a session closed to the public for the purpose of dealing with items 10.1 OEC update legal and 10.2 OEC update for the purpose of dealing with matters that are related to the security of the property of the municipality or local board, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for the purpose, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere, and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations to be carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. While in the session closed to the public, staff direction was given during the closed session on item 10.1, the OEC update legal. And for 10.2, the OEC update, I need a mover for the motion that the confidential briefing report dated June 14th, addressed to Douglas Carr, Town Solicitor, from Sean McCann, Chief Strategy and Growth Officer of Oakville Enterprises Corporation, attached as confidential Appendix A and distributed to the mayor and members of council only, be received. Councillor Giddings, thank you for the motion. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, and that is carried. We have no advisory committee minutes for this meeting, and so it would be in order to move to rise and report. Councillor Elger, thank you. Any objection to that motion? Madam Clerk, there being none, I declare that carried. I rise and report. The Committee of the Whole has met and has made recommendations on consent items 7.1 to 7.5, discussion items 9.1 to 9.4, and confidential discussion items 10.1 and 10.2, as noted by the clerk. A mover and seconder for this report would be in order. Councillor Knoll and Councillor Chisholm, thank you. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, the report is adopted. Council, you have your information items circulated electronically, and those are the council information items from May 11th to June 7th, the memo from Community Services Commission re full-scale and in-person 2022 Canada Day event, and the memo from Oakville Transit with regard to the on-demand pilot survey. You have your status of outstanding issues report for June 2022. And I would ask now if there's new business for this meeting. Seeing none, is there anything to occupy us under regional reports and question period regarding town boards and advisory committees? All right, are there any requests for reports? Thank you. Then a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws is in order. Councillor Lischina and Councillor Longo, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being none, the bylaws are considered read and passed. That ends the business of this meeting. It's been terrific working with you. Thank you very much for your time and your attention and the many great thoughts and questions that you brought to the work today. And I look forward to seeing you next time. We're adjourned.